Alright, this is just going to be a quick little vid on shimming the needles on this is a 2008 Ninja 250. It's got a slip-on exhaust, and the mid-range is really flat. So you'll go in around $5 grand, it'll kind of fall on its face. It gets through the mid-range, you get into the actual more of the main jet, which this one's already had an upgraded main jet. When you get into more of the main jet, everything picks up and the bike takes off, runs great. It runs fine coming off the idle circuit. So what we're going to look at is shimming up the needles to put a little bit more fuel into the mid-range of the throttle. I've gone ahead and stripped the fairings off the bike and taken off the seat and taken off the gas tank. There's quite a few videos out there for you to see that. You don't need to see me disassembling all this stuff. Mine, or my wife's, the air box is missing. It's been replaced with a set of Can-Am pods. It's a twin pod, fits these key and slide carburetors. What we're going to do is we're going to take these black caps off, and underneath them are the diaphragms for the slides and the needles. So let's go ahead and get them. We'll do one side at a time so we make sure we know what we're doing, and we'll go ahead and get them pulled off. Now once you pull the screws out, there's 4 screws. Be careful because there's a spring under tension underneath that cap that's going to want to send it and your screws flying everywhere. It's got the little piece that pushes down on the top of the needle. It's got that little piece that pushes down on top of the needle and the spring itself, and that's under tension underneath the cap. So once you got that out, gently make sure your vacuum diaphragm isn't stuck and pull it out. Now what, right there, we go ahead and we have the needle, and by shimming this needle up, we're actually pulling it up out of the emulsifier tube a little bit, and that'll give us our increase in the mid-range. And while you have it out, you want to take a look, make sure there's no rips or tears in this diaphragm. That can cause a lot of carburetor issues too. Now I've already previously modified this for a little bit better mid-range response. You can see there's a tiny little hole drilled right up there. Let's see. There it is. It's a number 70 drill bit. You can get them at Harbor Freight. They have the micro-sized drill bit kits, and it's the yellow one. I've mic'd it out. It mics pretty much identical to a specialized number 70 drill bit. So there's no hard and fast rule with how many washers. If you actually were to spend money and get like a Dynajet kit, or there's another one out there, I can't think of its name right now, but they have needles that have clips, so you just move the clip back and forth where you want it. Got to experiment on your bike. Some people are happy with 2 washers, some take 3. You know, factory bikes probably don't use any. We're probably going to go with 2 washers. Now I ran down to my local hardware store, by this fine hardware store bag, and I picked up some 3mm washers. They are microscopic. They were 9 cents a piece. I picked up 10 of them due to the fact that they are so flippin' tiny. So for $1, I got my washers. Now you can see I've just added 2 washers to it, and I'll put that back into my slide. There's a hole right down in there, hole in the middle. That's where your needle's going to go. And when you set it down in there, the needle just kind of sits right on top of those washers, which in essence picks the needle up earlier. Now be gentle, be careful, and you can go ahead and put your diaphragm, your slide back in, and try to make sure that you catch the hole. Alright, you can tap your finger around the edges Some people like to use a little bit of Vaseline to make sure that they get a good seal, that nothing sticks later on. I had dielectric grease happen to be close at hand, so when I put these back in last time, I used some dielectric grease. 6 1/2 dozen. Now these only go in one direction, so if you're trying to put it in and it just doesn't seem like it wants to go, turn it around, give it a 180 spin, and see if it'll drop in then. Once you make sure that you have the needle nice and seated down in the bottom, we'll go ahead and put our return spring in. And we want to make sure that we get that down over top of the needle. And then we're going to go ahead and put our cap on. Now our cap has a little spot that the spring kind of indexes on. This goes in the middle of the spring. So when we put this on, we're going to put this down the middle of the spring and then easily slightly compress it and then run our screws in. Alright, now you can see that this carb, you've got access, real easy access to all 4 screws. This carb's cap has screws that hold other components. You've got one screw that holds part of your choke. You got your vacuum lines going over the top. You've got another screw over here and another screw over here that holds your accelerator pump, which is connected via this vacuum line to the carburetor. The easiest way I've found is when you pull the screws to disconnect this vacuum down here and bring everything up, because the mount included, rather than trying to dismount this and get all this funky mess. Just disconnect this one little vacuum line up under here. See if it'll focus. Yeah, you see it right there. Alright, you can see got that up, pulled up and out of the way. Came right off that vacuum line. And then that gives us access to the diaphragm right here, the spring for the needle. And then we can pull the diaphragm and the needle assembly up. We'll go ahead and drop 2 shims and put it back down there and put it back together. Alright, when you get it all buttoned back up, make sure you got your choke cable set in its mounting bracket, because it's one of the ones that comes off with the screw. And double check and make sure you have the vacuum connection done, and that none of your other vacuum hoses have slipped off. Once that's done, go ahead and put your gas tank back on. Don't forget to reconnect your fuel sender and fire it up. So we'll put the gas tank back on and see if she runs. Now you can check your idle air fuel mixture by using the drop method. Once the bike's warmed up, if you flip the throttle and it hangs, it doesn't come right back to where it's idling, you're running too lean and you need to back the screws out counterclockwise on the bottom of the carburetors. If you flip it and it dives below where your idle is currently sitting and then recovers, you're running too rich, you need to turn them in a little bit. This bike's currently not up to temperature, but it does seem to be running about right. I think the settings on this bike are about 2.5, 2 3/4 turnout from bottom. So there you have it, quick little shim, bump those needles up, take out your flat spot in the mid-revs. Alright, so we've taken a nice little ride and everything's warmed up. She's running great. Not a lick of problems out of her. She rode great. No dead spots, no flat spots. Time to let the wife have her back.